quiet black girl walks into Brooklyn High. She's here to finish her senior year and stay unnoticed. But before she can even make it through the first week, a white girl in her class decides she's the perfect target. The laughter starts first. Then the whispers. Then the public humiliation. When the bully smirks, convinced it's time for one final performance, the crowd gathers, waiting for the inevitable. But there's something they don't know about the black girl. She's not just the new kid. She's a fighter, trained to battle. And she's about to remind them all exactly what that means. The yellow school bus pulled up to the curb in front of Brooklyn High. Its brakes hissed as the doors creaked open. Students spilled out, laughing and shoving, moving in groups that had long been established. No one paid attention to the girl stepping down last. Her backpack was slung over one shoulder, her expression unreadable. Imani Brooks adjusted her bag and took a steady breath. She scanned the tall brick building ahead of her. It wasn't much different from her old school in Chicago. Same crowded hallways, same noisy students, same unspoken rules of survival. Keep your head down, don't draw attention, and stay out of trouble. That had been her approach at every school before this one. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to finish her last year, get her diploma, and move on. As she walked through the entrance, she felt the usual stares. Whispers followed her. She knew how this worked. A new face always drew curiosity. But the attention was different when you were a black girl in a mostly white school. They weren't just looking at her. They were judging her. Would she be loud? Would she be aggressive? Would she be one of those girls? Imani ignored them. She kept her eyes forward as she searched for her locker. That's when she saw them. Jessica Carter. The name had already been whispered around her on the bus. The tall blonde girl moved with confidence, surrounded by her friends. She wasn't just popular. She was in control. The kind of girl who decided who mattered and who didn't. Next to her stood Monica and Ava, her loyal followers. But what really caught Imani's attention were the two boys with them. Ryan Carter, Jessica's older brother, a senior, and the school's star football player. He had a smirk that said he knew he was untouchable. Beside him was Trey Morales, a skinny, sharp-eyed boy with a loud mouth, the kind of guy who loved the sound of his own voice. Imani knew their type. She had no intention of getting involved with any of them. So she turned back to her locker, spinning the dial on her combination lock. But even as she kept her head down, she could feel it. Jessica's eyes on her, watching, calculating. The first class passed without trouble, but the whispers continued. Someone nudged her in the hallway. She's from Chicago. Think she's one of those tough girls? Imani didn't react. Let them think whatever they wanted. At lunch, she sat alone at an empty table in the corner of the cafeteria. She ate in silence, ignoring the chatter around her. Then the laughter changed. It grew louder, sharper, directed at her. "Well, well, look at this," Jessica's voice rang out, smooth and mocking. Imani didn't look up. She took a sip of her juice. "Oh, is the new girl shy?" Monica sneered. "I think she's just stuck up," Ava added, "acting like she's too good to talk to people." The cafeteria went quiet, watching. Imani kept eating, giving them nothing. Then Trey spoke up. "Maybe she doesn't speak English," he joked. Laughter spread. Ryan leaned against her table, towering over her. "Or maybe she's just slow." More laughter. Jessica smirked, waiting for a reaction. She needed one. If the new girl ignored her, that meant she wasn't afraid. And Jessica couldn't have that. She reached forward and flicked Imani's juice cup, spilling it over her food. The cafeteria fell silent. Imani exhaled slowly. She set her fork down, wiped her hands, and stood up calmly. Without looking at Jessica or her friends, she picked up her tray, walked to the trash, and threw it away. Then she laughed. Behind her, laughter erupted again, but it sounded forced, uneasy. Jessica felt it too. Because when Imani finally looked at her before walking away, there was something in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, just a cold, quiet patience. And for the first time in a long time, Jessica Carter felt something she wasn't used to. Uncertainty. The tension from the cafeteria spread through the school. By the next class, everyone was whispering about it. It should have been a win for Jessica. Another new kid humiliated. But something about Imani's reaction didn't sit right. She hadn't looked embarrassed. She hadn't even looked angry. It was like she had expected it. Jessica hated that feeling. The loss of control. In class, she tapped her nails on her desk, barely listening to the teacher. Monica leaned over. "That was weird, right?" Jessica forced a smile. "She's faking, trying to look tough." But Monica still looked unsure, and Jessica knew others felt the same. Across the room, Ryan stretched and grinned. "You look stressed, sis," Jessica glared. "Shut up," Ryan chuckled. "Relax. If she wants to act tough, we'll just push harder. She'll break." Trey smirked. "Yeah, maybe we need to turn up the heat." Jessica let their words sink in. Maybe they were right. Maybe Imani was just pretending. But if she thought she could walk around like she was untouchable, she had another thing coming. By the next day, the pressure started to build. Imani could feel it before she even got to school. People looked at her differently now. The energy had shifted. She wasn't just the new kid anymore. Now, she was a challenge. She didn't react. She didn't need to. Walking to her locker that morning, she moved with the same calm, unbothered attitude as always. But the whispers followed her. She really just walked away. She didn't even look mad. What if she's actually dangerous? The rumors spread fast. Soon, Jessica and her crew decided to test her again. It started small. In gym class, Monica and Ava accidentally bumped into her. An elbow here, a shove there. Imani didn't react. That only made them bolder. During basketball, Ryan stole the ball from her every time she got it, shoving her hard enough to make her stumble. Trey laughed. "Damn, new girl. Do you even know how to play?" Imani ignored them. Jessica watched, arms crossed, waiting for Imani to crack. But nothing. Imani took every shove, every insult, every unfair move, and didn't flinch. If anything, she looked bored. It wasn't submission, it was control. Jessica gritted her teeth. That was worse. By lunchtime, Jessica was done playing games. Imani had barely picked up her tray when she felt it. A hard shove from behind. She stumbled forward. Her tray tipped. Food splattered across the floor. The cafeteria went silent. Then the laughter started. Jessica smirked as she stepped forward, standing over Imani like she'd already won. "Oh no," she mocked. "Did the poor little new girl drop her lunch? That's so sad." Eva and Monica laughed. Ryan leaned against a table, smirking. Trey recorded on his phone. Other students pulled out their cameras. This was it. This was the moment Imani was supposed to break. Jessica leaned in. "What's wrong? Gonna cry? Maybe you should run home to Mommy." More laughter. More cameras. But Imani didn't move. She stood completely still for a second, fists clenched. Then, slowly, she looked up at Jessica, and she smiled. It was small, almost unnoticeable. But Jessica saw it. For the first time, Jessica felt something cold crawl up her spine. The cafeteria was still laughing, but Jessica suddenly wasn't sure why. It didn't feel like winning anymore. Imani bent down, calmly picked up her tray, and, without breaking eye contact, walked away. Laughter exploded again, but it wasn't the same. Jessica could hear the confusion beneath it, the whispers. That wasn't fear in Imani's eyes. It wasn't anger. It was something else entirely. And for the first time in her life, Jessica Carter felt doubt. That night, Imani sat at the kitchen table, staring at her untouched plate of food. Her father, Darius Brooks, stood at the counter, pouring himself coffee. His sharp eyes flicked toward her every so often. He didn't need to ask if something was wrong. Darius had seen that look before, the quiet, controlled stillness of someone holding back. He set his coffee cup down and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "All right," he said, voice steady. "Tell me." Imani exhaled slowly, replaying the cafeteria scene in her head. The spilled food, the laughter, Jessica's smug face. "I don't want to fight," she finally said. Darius studied her. "And yet you're thinking about it." Imani's hands curled into fists. "I don't want to fight," she repeated, her voice tighter this time. "But I don't want to be that girl either. The one who just takes it. The one they think they can push around. I walked away today, and it made things worse." Darius took a slow sip of coffee, choosing his words carefully. "You walked away because you didn't want to hurt them." Imani looked up sharply. He met her gaze, unblinking. "I trained you to defend yourself, not to be a weapon. But I also trained you to know when people like that won't stop, until you give them a reason to." She swallowed. She knew that truth too well. She had grown up in a fighting gym, surrounded by fighters. Her father had been a professional before becoming a trainer. She'd been sparring with grown men since she was 8. Footwork, instincts, reading an opponent, all drilled into her since childhood. But that power had consequences. The last time she'd really fought back, a boy ended up in the hospital. It ruined her life. New school, new city, a promise to herself to never let that side out again. She took a slow breath. "If I fight back, it won't end there. It never does." Darius nodded. "True, but walking away doesn't always end it either. If they think you're weak, they'll keep pushing until they break you." Imani met his eyes. "So what do I do?" Darius pulled out a chair and sat across from her, leaning forward. "You don't start fights, Imani, but you finish them." His voice was calm but firm. "You don't need to prove anything to them. But if they leave you no choice, you make sure they never try it again." She exhaled, the tension in her chest loosening slightly. Darius sat back. "I know you. I know your control. You're not some wild kid throwing fists out of anger. You make decisions. You calculate." A pause. Then he added, "So, if you have to fight, don't do it to teach them a lesson." His gaze locked onto hers. "Do it to end the fight before it even begins." Imani let his words sink in. She wasn't looking for a fight, but she knew the fight was coming for her. And when it did, she'd be ready. Jessica Carter couldn't sleep that night. She kept replaying the cafeteria scene. No matter how she twisted it, she couldn't ignore one thing. Imani had smiled. Not flinched, not cowered, just smiled. It wasn't right. It wasn't normal. And it wasn't over. People had laughed, sure, but the whispers afterward had changed. Some even sounded impressed. Jessica's stomach twisted. She wasn't letting some nobody mess with the order of things. By morning, the plan was set. Ryan, Trey, Monica, Ava, all on board. This wasn't just about proving a point anymore. It was about making sure Imani knew her place. Word spread fast. By lunch, everyone knew. After school. Behind the gym. No teachers. No cameras. just a lesson in humility. Imani knew too. She felt the shift the moment she walked into school. The stares, the curiosity, the pity. She wasn't stupid. She'd been through this before. Different faces, same patterns. She'd spent years avoiding fights, staying quiet, keeping her head down. But people like Jessica never understood silence. They thought it meant weakness. And Imani was done pretending. When the final bell rang, she didn't hesitate. She walked to the back of the school, stepping onto the cracked pavement behind the gym. They were already waiting. Jessica stood in the center, arms crossed, smirking. Monica and Ava flanked her. Ryan and Trey hovered close, their presence a silent threat. Behind them, a crowd had gathered. At least 20 students, some whispering, some filming. Imani stopped a few feet from Jessica. Jessica tilted her head. "Wow, you actually showed up. I thought you'd keep running like yesterday." Imani didn't blink. "I wasn't running." Jessica scoffed. "Please, you didn't even stand up for yourself." Imani exhaled, tilting her head like she was bored. "You think throwing food is a fight?" Jessica's smile twitched. "Oh, don't worry," she said sweetly. "I'll make it a real one." She stepped closer. Imani spoke, her voice calm but final. "I'm here to warn you." Jessica blinked. "Warn me?" Ryan and Trey exchanged glances. Monica and Ava looked confused. Imani's tone was steady. "You don't want to do this." Jessica laughed, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Oh, that's adorable. The new girl's threatening me." "Not a threat," Imani said. "A warning." Jessica hated how her own heartbeat sped up. Hated that Imani wasn't scared. Hated that she suddenly felt like the one making a mistake. Ryan stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "You done talking? Or are we starting this?" Jessica smirked, seizing the out. "You heard her, Rye. She says we don't want to do this, so show her how wrong she is." Ryan rolled his shoulders, stepping up to Imani. He towered over her, 6 inches taller, built like a wall. He grinned like this was a joke. "Don't worry," he mocked. "I'll go easy on—" He swung. It happened in a blink. Imani wasn't there anymore. She stepped inside his reach, grabbed his wrist, and twisted, using his own momentum against him. Ryan's world flipped. 1 second, he was throwing a punch. The next, his back slammed into the pavement so hard the air rushed from his lungs. The crowd gasped. Jessica's stomach dropped. Ryan lay on the ground, coughing, eyes wide with shock. Because that wasn't supposed to happen. That wasn't possible. Imani stepped back. Her face was unreadable. "I warned you." Trey hesitated. His confidence wavered. His body tensed. But he had a reputation to keep. He couldn't back down, not in front of everyone. "Pitch got lucky," he spat. He charged forward. Imani barely moved. She sidestepped at the last second. In one smooth motion, she grabbed Trey's wrist mid-strike, spun behind him, and twisted his arm into a lock. It was so fast, he let out a choked yell. She let him go. Trey stumbled forward, clutching his arm. He stared at her like she was something unreal. The crowd fell silent. Jessica felt her pulse pounding in her skull. She had lost control. Imani stood there, hands relaxed at her sides, completely calm. When she finally looked at Jessica again, her voice was quiet, almost disappointed. "Do you still think I was running?" Jessica didn't answer. She couldn't. For the first time in her life, she knew what it felt like to be the prey. For the first time, Jessica Carter had nothing to say. The silence was heavy. The same crowd that had come to see Imani humiliated now stood frozen, staring in shock. Their disbelief reflected back at Jessica like a warped mirror. Ryan was still on the ground, struggling to breathe, his pride broken. Trey stood stiffly, cradling his arm, jaw clenched tight, as if trying to hold in his shame. Monica and Ava, Jessica's usual followers, were silent. Their smug grins were gone. And Imani? She hadn't moved. She didn't celebrate, didn't mock them, didn't even look pleased. She just stood there, steady, hands at her sides, like none of this had been hard for her. Jessica's nails dug into her palms. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Her mind raced, searching for a way to fix this, to take back control. She needed to remind everyone she was still Jessica Carter, the one who made the rules, the one they feared. Then Imani spoke again, making sure Jessica understood just how badly she had lost. "You thought this was about power," Imani said, her voice soft but firm. "But the truth is, you were never strong to begin with." Jessica felt the words hit like a slap. They burned through her skin, her pride, her whole being. Then Imani turned away, just like that. She left Jessica standing there, humiliated in front of the same crowd that once worshipped her. The movement was so simple, so dismissive. Jessica snapped. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She just acted, lunging forward to grab Imani's hair in a desperate attempt to take back control. It was a mistake. Before Jessica could react, her wrist was caught mid-air, trapped in an iron grip. Imani didn't even turn her head. She just held Jessica's arm there effortlessly, her body completely still. Jessica froze, her breath catching. Then Imani finally turned to look at her. Jessica felt the full weight of that steady, unshakable gaze. Imani's grip tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to show Jessica her own weakness. She leaned in close so only Jessica could hear. "You don't have power over me, and you never will." Then she let go. Jessica stumbled back, her heart pounding violently. Her body had betrayed her in front of everyone. Imani didn't wait for a response. She just walked away. This time the silence wasn't just shock. It was final. Jessica knew it, and worse, everyone else did too. Ryan and Trey weren't smirking. Monica and Ava weren't whispering in her ear. The crowd that once hung on her every word now looked at her differently. Not with fear, but with pity. Jessica couldn't breathe. She hadn't just lost a fight. She'd lost everything. The next morning, Brooklyn High felt different. Jessica walked through the halls with her shoulders squared and chin lifted, her designer bag in place like nothing had changed. But she felt it. The shift, the weight, the whispers following her. For years, she'd controlled this school, decided who mattered and who didn't. Now she was the one being watched, not with admiration or fear, but with doubt, with curiosity. She heard Imani's name murmured behind her, not hers. People weren't talking about Jessica's power anymore. They were talking about how the new girl had destroyed it in less than a week. At her usual cafeteria table, Jessica sat stiffly, barely eating. Monica and Ava were quiet, avoiding eye contact, their loyalty uncertain. Ryan and Trey sat nearby, bruised egos fresh, but silent. No one spoke. For the first time, Jessica wasn't the center of attention. Across the room, Imani sat alone as usual, eating calmly like nothing had happened. But something had. People glanced her way, hesitated near her table. Basketball players nodded respectfully. Girls who'd ignored her before now seemed interested. But Imani didn't care. She wasn't seeking attention or trying to replace Jessica. She'd done what she came to do and moved on. No gloating, no power grab. Because to Imani, Jessica's throne never mattered. Jessica clenched her fork. Maybe she could still fix this. Maybe she could turn things around. A shadow fell across her table. Jessica looked up. Imani stood there. For a moment, Jessica couldn't breathe. Imani didn't sit, didn't lower her voice. She just looked at Jessica, completely calm and in control. "We're done," she said simply. Jessica's throat tightened. Everyone was watching, waiting. The words felt like a final judgment. Jessica had lost. Everyone knew it. Imani didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away. Jessica sat frozen as her world crumbled. Imani left the cafeteria without looking back. For the first time in her life, Jessica Carter had no control at all. Jessica wasn't the center of attention anymore. Across the room, Imani sat alone, just like before. She ate her lunch calmly, unbothered, as if nothing had happened. But something had. People kept glancing at her. Some whispered, others just watched. A few hesitated near her table, like they wanted to sit with her. Even some basketball team members nodded at her in respect as they passed. Girls who used to ignore her now seemed curious, but Imani didn't care. She wasn't looking for attention. She wasn't trying to replace Jessica. She had done what she came to do, and now she was done. Jessica hated that the most. Imani hadn't just beaten her, she had moved on. No victory lap, no gloating, no desire to take Jessica's spot at the top. To Imani, the throne never mattered. Jessica's fingers tightened around her fork. She could fix this. She had fixed worse before. Maybe if she changed the story, maybe if she made Imani look bad. Then a shadow fell over her table. Jessica looked up. Imani was standing there. For a second, Jessica forgot to breathe. Imani didn't sit. She didn't lower her voice. She just looked at Jessica, calm and in control. "We're done," she said simply. Jessica's throat closed up. Everyone was listening. She could feel dozens of eyes on them, waiting, watching, holding their breath. The words felt like a final judgment. Jessica had lost, and everyone knew it. Imani didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away. Jessica sat frozen, her world falling apart, as Imani stepped out of the cafeteria, leaving everything behind. For the first time in her life, Jessica Carter had no control at all. Join us to share meaningful stories. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to start your day with deep lessons and heartfelt empathy.
I hope you enjoyed this thrilling journey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story? Let me know in the comments below. Your feedback inspires more epic tales.